Good Tuesday evening. I'm Alex Forbes, watching the tropics across the Atlantic Ocean because we have two active systems right now. We've got Tropical Depression Aaron just off the Carolina coast. That's going to continue to move towards the northeast and not affect anybody as it does so. But Hurricane Dorian could. Right now it's an 85-mile-an-hour Category 1 hurricane located just to the north of San Juan, Puerto Rico. Pressure has fallen now to 986 millibars, which does indicate strengthening, and it's moving towards the northwest at about 13 miles an hour. We've been watching it all day on radar. It brought showers and storms to Puerto Rico, to the U.S. Virgin Islands, and also the British Virgin Islands, and now it is on its way just past the Turks and Caicos and eventually up towards the Bahamas, and it's going to move further and further away from the radar, which means we'll lose sight of it here in the next couple of hours. Now, through Dorian's history, we've talked about dry air inhibiting some of the development of the storm, but notice now with this northwest movement, it is moving into air that is not as dry, and it's much more favorable for tropical development. It's certainly not like what we saw down towards the central Atlantic and into the Lesser Antilles. Definitely more favorable conditions, including sea surface temperatures, which is above 80 degrees all the way to the Florida coast, which just fuels tropical systems like Dorian, and it's also above 80 degrees in the Gulf of Mexico, which could potentially help Dorian here in the next couple of days if it makes it to the Gulf of Mexico. Right now, the official Hurricane Center track has this strengthening to a Category 3 hurricane by Saturday evening just to the north of the Bahamas, and then moving in towards the central Florida coast by 7 p.m. Sunday, so overnight Sunday into Monday, a landfalling major hurricane there along the central Florida coast. That includes places like Daytona Beach, New Smyrna Beach, down towards Cape Canaveral and Melbourne. That is where the center of the cone is right now, but the cone includes all the way from Savannah, Georgia, down to near Miami, Florida. So anywhere in this area needs to be prepared for potentially a major hurricane making landfall early Monday morning. And then as it does so, it would move across the state of Florida as a hurricane, potentially moving across the Orlando area as a hurricane, and then into the Gulf of Mexico before all is said and done. Bottom line, the more time it spends out over the Atlantic water, the stronger it will be before landfall here along the central Florida coast. Now notice these spaghetti models are pretty in alignment per se, all the way up to just north of the Bahamas. Then they start to widen just a little bit. Of course, there are a lot lining up in central Florida, but notice the Gulf of Mexico. We do have a couple of models that do bring this actually further out into the Gulf of Mexico and then making a turn towards areas like Mississippi, Alabama, and Florida. So northern Gulf Coast certainly needs to watch this storm very closely, and especially to see its strength at landfall, because that will play a major role in forecasting the strength by the time it gets out over the Gulf of Mexico. So bottom line, this is a much stronger storm anticipated for the United States than earlier thought, even as recently as yesterday. If you are along the central Florida coastline, you should begin hurricane preparedness plans now. That includes reviewing what you would do in maybe an evacuation if that does come out. Of course, listen to your local officials. If you are in the northern Gulf Coast, you should definitely monitor this storm very closely.